Live from New York City, it's the Gary Null Show. And now, your host, Gary Null.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Null. Nice to have you with us today. This is the latest on health and healing, always coming from the Library of Medicine's peer-reviewed literature, always from respected institutions. And then if there's something that I can add from my own clinical or research experience, I will. But this is meant to allow you to prevent illnesses and live a longer and healthier life. We began with a study from South Korea, from the Kyung-hee University, and it talks about a healthy plant-based diet is associated with a lower colorectal cancer risk, especially in men. Why? Well, it's relatively simple, because the average American diet is overloaded with protein, overloaded with refined carbohydrate, white flour, white sugar products, and unfortunately is debased of any nutrients. As a result, food going through the intestine, the average American's diet, is like going from 70 miles an hour on a highway to 5 miles an hour on a highway. The longer those toxic foods are in contact with the sensitive mucous membranes of your intestine, the greater opportunity for inflammation. Now, we consider that all the sugars that we eat and all the refined carbohydrates that break down into simple sugars, then we're going to spike our blood sugar. Not good. Probably nearly 90 to 100 million Americans either have prediabetes or diabetic, and most don't know it. And unfortunately, you can prevent diabetes. You can reverse diabetes naturally. I've helped countless people do that, but it takes discipline, and it takes understanding that fiber, lots of various fibers, fruit fibers, nut fibers from walnuts and almonds and pistachios, and your starchy vegetable fibers, bean, legume, pulse fibers. These are all important in moving food through the intestine, also creating a healthy bacteria in the intestine that also helps in the digestive process and your immune process. So quite simply, in lay language, eating a plant-based diet, rich in healthy plant foods, such as whole grains, vegetables, legumes, and low in unhealthy plant foods, including refined grains and like white rice and fruit juices that are made up of sugar, and is associated with a lower risk of colorectal cancer. That's very important, because colorectal cancer is the third most common cancer worldwide, and the risk of developing colorectal cancer over a lifetime is 1 in 23 for men and 1 in 25 for women. Now, let's go back to nearly the beginning of my career. There were 3 gentlemen over in Great Britain who were the country's leading health experts. So I flew over. I interviewed all of them. Dr. Burkitt, who discovered Burkitt's lymphoma, and he had this to say. He said when he was the chief physician visiting some 69 rural hospitals in Africa, he found it virtually impossible to find a case of appendicitis, colorectal cancer, diverticulitis, spastic colon. Strokes were so rare that when one happened, other doctors would congregate to see what was the underlying cause. Why? And he said it was because the people in their area of Africa had a very healthy plant-based diet, principally plant-based. The primary grain that they consumed was millet. Millet's not consumed in the United States very often. It's a tiny little grain, about the same size as quinoa, and it's kind of yellowish. It's very mild. In fact, you don't even have to cook it. If you just put millet into a bowl and then pour hot water into it, stir it around, and come back half hour later, it's germinated. And it's easy to eat. It tastes like almonds. And that's what they consume as a primary grain. But they also have gourds. They have a lot of starchy vegetables. Then I spoke with John Yudkin. Yudkin was the first person to hold a chair in a nutrition at a major Great Britain University. And he says that the problem is we have too many refined carbohydrates, too much sugar. And he was right. And he says, so you get people on let's say 30 to 40 grams a day of a fiber, they're going to live a longer life. They're going to have lower blood pressure, lower cholesterol, and they're going to have lower blood, overall, lower problems with inflammation all over the body. Then the last one I spoke to was Dr. Cleve. He had been a medical doctor in the Royal Navy, and he said when people were eating boxed and canned foods at sea, completely different than when they got to shore, especially in the tropics. That's where his cruising was, and they were eating fresh produce. And he said everything changed. Their energy changed, their complexion changed, bleeding gums no longer occurred. He said that most people suffer from subclinical scurvy. Now, traditional scurvy is what sailors found when they were out to sea and they were eating salted pork and nothing good. And then one of the physicians found that when they took limes or lime juice and gave that each day, that was rich in vitamin C. It prevented scurvy, which killed people. But what we have, according to Dr. Cleve, is we have subclinical scurvy. People have a poor diet. They're not supplementing with vitamin C. They're not having fresh orange juice. As a result, their immune system takes a hit. And we now know that a lot of people who have diseases are deficient in vitamin D3, zinc, selenium, and vitamin C, and magnesium. So just imagine how easy those nutrients are to put into your diet, along with a lot of plants. In fact, it was found when they examined 79,952 American men that had a good plant-based diet, they had a 22% lower risk of colorectal cancer compared to those with the lowest fresh vegetables and fruits. So the more fruits and vegetables you get into the diet, the better it is. That's an important study and simple, easy to do, not expensive. In fact, you save money on a plant-based diet. Now, this comes from Ben Gurion University of the Negev in Israel. And what it is they found that a green Mediterranean diet reduces twice as much visceral fat as traditional Mediterranean diets. And so following a lot of vegetables in the Mediterranean diet reduce the adipose tissue, a type of fat around the internal organs that is much more dangerous than the extra tire around your waist. Recently, researchers compared the green Mediterranean diet to the traditional Mediterranean diet and non-Mediterranean healthy diets in a large-scale clinical international trials. It was published in Direct Plus. And subsequent analysis found that the green Mediterranean diet reduced visceral fat by 14%. That's a lot. The Mediterranean diet, 7%, and the non-Mediterranean diets, 4.5%. And this was published in the British Medical Journal Medicine. So reducing your internal visceral fat is one of the goals to losing weight. More importantly, however, it helps keep all the fat from infiltrating all your organs in the body. And the green part just means they were talking about having 20 grams a day of vegetables. That's way too little. The green participants had 3 to 4 cups of green leafy vegetables a day, and that's important. So the more vegetables in the diet, the more greens, microgreens, sprouts, the better. From the University of Illinois in Chicago, are older women being over-screened for cervical cancer. A new study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association's Internal Medicine suggests that women over the age of 65 may be undergoing unnecessary cervical cancer screenings, and that more public health data is needed on the utilization of cervical cancer screening associated services among older women to prevent potential harm and unnecessary cost. The study, which is authored by experts from the University of Illinois and University of Chicago, San Francisco, and the CDC, looked at Medicare claims from 1999 to 2019, and they found that 1.3 million women receive cervical cancer screening associated services like a Pap test. Now, I support a Pap test. A Pap test is one of the most important tests you can get to help you with the early detection of cervical cancer. They also looked at other cervical procedures, and that's what they found. So please get a Pap test at least once a year, and that is a big preventative motion. Also, from Washington State University, chemotherapy could increase disease susceptibility in future generations. A common chemotherapy drug could carry a toxic inheritance for children and grandchildren of adolescent cancer survivors. The Washington State University-led researchers indicate this. The study published in the online iScience found that in this study it was rats, male rats who received the drug during adolescence had offspring and grand offspring with increased incidence of disease. So it just passes it forward. Here is the question. Cancer has been here since the beginning of human existence. Why is it that we still have over 500,000 Americans doing everything they're told with the Orthodox approach and still dying? I would think that after all these millions and millions of people obeying their oncologists, doing what they're told, taking the therapies, and we're still losing that much, isn't it time that we stopped and looked at the other therapies around the world, Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, and then some of the Native American procedures? All around the world, there are people who've used other non-toxic therapies, not only survive cancer, but are in vital health. I believe that the pharmaceutical industry has had an undue influence on the curriculum in medical schools and on what doctors prescribe. Isn't it time that we started looking for what is in the best interest of the patient? Just a thought. And finally today, one last study, saffron. Now, I'm sure you've all had saffron, whether you recognize it or not. It frequently gives the orangish, reddish color to a lot of the curry dishes. But saffron is also one of the most powerful natural healing herbs there is. It's a spice. And saffron can fight liver cancer. This is from the United Arab Emirates researchers at the university, United Arab Emirates University. So it may be an expensive spice, but you cannot put a label on price on health. And so that's what they found, that adding saffron could end up fighting liver cancer, which is a tough cancer to fight under any circumstances because it has anti-cancer properties. What are these? It's called safranal, S-A-F-R-A-N-A-L, a major biochemical of the golden spice saffron, and it arrests and stops cancer cell division in two different stages. That's important. And this was published in the peer-reviewed journal Hepatology Journal. So if you can take something that's natural and non-toxic on a regular basis, then you're taking in something that has an anti-proliferative activity of the safranal against human liver cancer cells. That's important. This was published also in Nature Journal, Scientific Reports. And Japanese researchers say that ultrasound therapy can be used to treat patients with dementia. Tohoku University in Japan. So a new therapy based upon ultrasound waves might be able to improve the cognitive power of patients suffering from Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. This was published, the article, on the Tohoku University news page, and I think it's important. Just one more thing that we can do to help people live longer and healthier lives. Now, that's the latest on health and healing. For those of you who like the information on health, well, you can go to PRN.Live. I do a radio show every day, live at noon. If you miss the live show, you can go to the archives, just PRN.Live, then go to the archives. And also go to GaryNull.com. Look under articles. We have a newsletter. It's free. And it comes every morning on your computer. So if you're driving or you're busy, or maybe you're at work and you're listening, but you can't write stuff down, you don't have to. It's all there for you every day, 5 days a week. And also on Tuesdays, I do my progressive commentary hour, hard-hitting, important topic, 7 p.m. So in any case, there's lots of resources for you. Thank you for watching.
Our faithful PRN listeners, the time for change is here. You can now follow us on our Twitter, Tumblr, and our LinkedIn page. So be sure to like and follow all the clips that you see. And don't forget to go to PRN.Live for all live programming throughout the current day.